identity is an ongoing process. It's an ongoing story that we participate in. Most people's language is working against them and they have no idea.
Welcome to the Spear and Clover podcast, the show about the art of crushing your goals and the discipline of loving your life while you do. I'm your host, Jason Skisik, the entrepreneurial evangelist, and each week I bring you the stories of visionaries who see the world as it could be and can't help but take action. If you're enjoying these episodes, please take a moment to subscribe, like, and review. This is the best way to stay in the loop when we drop new content. Sharing this podcast with friends is the best way to ensure we can keep making them and keep bringing more and more interesting guests. Today's guest is Mark England. Mark England is on a mission. He has spent over a decade laser focused on the power of language and how we can use it to improve the way we communicate, think, and perform. On today's show, Mark shares his story as well as tons of tactical gold around how we can use language to improve our lives and the lives of those around us. Please welcome my friend, Mark England. Mark, how are you?
I'm doing well, Jason. Thank you for having me on.
Man, thank you so much for having me on the show. Is a real honor. Mark England is the owner and head coach of Enlifted Coaching. Is that right?
Yes. Myself and my buddy Adam Chin, we're co-owners.
That's exciting. And you also have a program called Profitably, which I've had the honor of taking a look at this week. Super excited to kind of dig in on that stuff as well. Mark, if you could, for people at home, can you kind of just give us a baseline of what it is that you do, what your specialties are, and we'll kind of kick it off from there.
Got it. Our good friend Mike Bledsoe once upon a time called me a one-trick pony. And I like that. I've been doing one thing, everybody, somewhere between full-time and overtime the whole time for the past 15 years. And that is researching, presenting, and coaching about the power of our words, the power of our language, how our language, and when I say language, I mean internal dialogue and external dialogue, what we think, what we say, what we write, how it influences us for better and for worse. And before I was doing this, I was an elementary school PE teacher. I got a degree in education, came up in the public school system. And I didn't have one course class or even conversation on either side of that educational fence about how to use my language to stay focused on the things that are important to me and build myself up in my imagination and create a good set of feels about myself and my life, also known as the story that I tell myself to myself. So yeah, that's what we've been doing. And we've gotten better at it along the way, as of course, whatever you do repeatedly. And there's something's up, man. Something's in the air. This conversation it's easier to have, Jason. More and more people are talking about our opinion. And I'm off on a rant. Rein me in.
You're good, man. I love it.
Yeah. It's either the missing link or the final component when it comes to mindset. So mindset is very, very frequently held in this macro conversation, this big picture conversation. It's this thing that I know I need to get better at, but how? And then there's that confident looking person over there. That looks fun. I'm over here. Whoops, would have been nice.
Yeah.
When we add in what words to use less of and why, and what words to use more of and why, and how to pick up a pen and get those stories that have haunted you for God knows how long on paper, write them out and air them out and get your nervous system down regulated in context to those particular stories. Time doesn't apply to the emotional body. Side note, then mindset becomes practical. And those are the words we use, practical mindset tools to develop confidence and freedom.
Yeah, I think that's so smart of you guys to focus on, because I think sometimes people think of mindset as this static state. It's like, oh, he's got a great mindset, or like, oh, she's weak-minded, or whatever the thing might be.
Yeah.
That's like saying, man, I did the dishes. Why would I ever have to do them again? Well, it seems like it's a practice. And I, even just looking at, I got through most of your course, the entry-level course, and right away I could tell it's like, yeah, if you think this way, you're in much better spot to be in a stronger mental position to make decisions that are going to be more positive and favorable outcomes. I really do enjoy I've dabbled a little bit in NLP. I know that you have a background there, but I love this kind of the power of positivity and positive thinking from more than just a woo-woo perspective, right?
Yeah, for sure. It's hard to make decisions when we're using a lot of soft talk.
Mm-hmm.
And so what's soft talk? It's one of the 3 pillars of conflict language. So in this system that my business partner and I have created, there are 3 pillars of something called conflict language. And before conflict language was called conflict language, we actually had to reshoot that course that you took. We dropped that in 2015. We shot the first one in late 2014, got it in the can and looked at each other and decided to reshoot it, which was no small task for 2 dudes bootstrapping a company.
Sure.
Because before conflict language was called conflict language, it was called victim mentality language. Okay. Good time for me to, for the umpteenth, 100th time, recite the definition of the victim mentality. So the definition, there's this thing, folks, it's called the victim mentality. And in my personal and professional opinion, it is the elephant in the room, and it is the thief in the night, and it's coming for everything you got. It's coming for your time. It's coming for your attention. It's coming for your mental real estate. It's coming for your belief in yourself. And and there's a definition to it. And when people hear the definition, and then we add in some of these key components as far as, like I said, what words to use less of and why, what words to use more of and why, then it's easy to get their head around victim centricities in their identity. The definition of the victim mentality, it is an I'm going to take a little bit out of the middle. This is the verbatim definition. It is an acquired personality trait where a person tends to regard himself or herself as the victim of the negative actions of others, even in the absence of clear evidence. The victim mentality depends on a habitual thought process and attributions. That second sentence, everybody, right between the eyes, right where it belongs. The victim mentality depends, as in it has to have a habitual thought process. Habitual accurately implies duration and addiction. This thing doesn't happen overnight. And if we rep certain stories and emotionalize strongly enough over them, we literally become addicted to them. And so if there's this habitual thought pattern that the victim mentality has to have in order for it to get set up in my mindset, what are the habitual thoughts? What are the habitual words? I mean, this is rocket science, folks. I'm kidding. None of it is. And there are 3 main pillars of what we call conflict language, what was victim mentality language. We shot the course because we're like, hey, dude, this is too strong of a place to start the conversation. Okay. And we did. It was the right move because people are like, oh, no, I'm no victim. Yeah. You talk about conflict, though. They're like, yeah, I got a little conflict going on at work, and you should see my relationship. Sure. So to bring it all the way back to what I mentioned earlier, soft talk. It's hard to make decisions when there are key words in my language like guess and maybe and kinda and perhaps and probably and sort of and think and almost like. It's almost like I'm procrastinating, Jason. Maybe I need to spend more time with my girlfriend. Okay. I might have an issue with that person. Soft talk, we call it the gateway drug to the rest of the words because it's so easy to to train ourselves to hear them, raise our awareness about it, and then start taking some action, just taking out a soft talk keyword here and there. People feel that shit, man, and you feel it quick. And as the saying goes, he who feels it knows it, or she who feels it knows it. And when you take out some of these keywords that I guarantee, I promise y'all, they're in your language. When you take them out and the text it feels better to send, or you have a better conversation with someone, or you make a decision faster and cleaner in your mind about something because you're not maybeing about it. It's because it's not the second guess that gets us. It's the 550-second guess that gets us. There's 10 million dead squirrels out there on the road that will attest to this, Yeah,
so, either is it or isn't, right?
Yeah, a lot of times. And I don't know anyone that likes prolonged bouts of indecision. That's a certain flavor of anxiety. What would be best for your audience, Jason? I could talk a little bit more about my background. I can tell more stories about language and story or identity?
I definitely like to go through that. But before we move on from what you were just talking about, the one thing I would point out is, I've been watching your course and kind of going through this, and it's not something I was unaware of, but it is something that I will say, I'm curious what your feedback is on this. I am naturally very candorous, also, especially coming out of the military. It was this way,
Sure.
It's this way, that is the way it is, and this is the way it's going to be. And what I found was that soft talk has sort of crept into my life almost as like, when you see like teenage girl who's really tall, she kind of slumps her shoulders a little bit, rounds off the edges a little bit. I'm curious if you come across this, not that I am a negative self-talk person, but it's almost like I want to make you comfortable in this conversation. And so what I do is I sort of, what is A equals B to me, I make it A might equal B. And I find myself as I'm watching your course going, dang it, I do that all the time. I'm curious if you find a lot of folks coming in, especially from the entrepreneur side of the house, that maybe are naturally candorous and have fallen into this addiction to this kind of like soft talk or weaker language.
Yeah, for sure. There's some definite patterns there. And we see that a lot. It's the most common feedback we get when we train groups of people in organizations or corporate environments. Here it is. A lot of the women say, I don't want to sound like a bitch. I don't want to come across as aggressive. And the magic trick to that is to be comfortable with what you're saying, be comfortable with what I'm saying. Because when I'm comfortable with what I'm saying, I'm breathing low and slow in my abdomen. And people respond just as much to people's quote unquote energy as they do to their words. Okay. Because they are interlinked. If I deliver instruction to someone or I make a request in solid language, which is just, there's no soft talk in there, and I am comfortable with what I'm saying, it's received 1,000 times better. So that's the first thing that we recommend. If this helps or is applicable to you, breathe while you're talking. Not only is that going to solve a lot of problems or potential issues when it comes to being direct and solid in our communication, that is almost universally, let's just take out the almost, that's universally applicable when it comes to storytelling. Whether you're going out on a date with someone, go out on a date with someone and hold your breath, see how that goes. You're all nervous. People pick up on that. Or go give a presentation or a sales, go pitch, go sell, whatever it is, sales conversation. And you're all tense and tight and your breath is up in your chest, which is where most people's breathing is trapped. It's called shallow breathing or labored breathing or coastal breathing. And in my personal, again, professional opinion, a large part of that, ask any yoga teacher how people breathe when they walk in the room. A large part of that, very large part of that, is due to the ongoing conflict language. People are jamming themselves in these upregulated stress states. And that's that's home base, that's homeostasis. They're used to living that way. And so, whether you want to, deliver clear communication or give a great presentation. So our main revenue generating avenue with our business is certifications. We certify coaches on how to dismantle people's victim mentality. We'll keep it simple.
Sure.
I don't advertise. It's just word of mouth, whatever. The only one-on-one coaching I do anymore is presentation skills. Okay. And within the first 10 minutes of the first session, we're talking about rate of speech and where people breathe when they present. If I want to wreck a presentation, get up there, breathe in my chest, and deliver from there. If I want to deliver a fantastic presentation, get up there and breathe low and slow. Those are the words that we use. Breathe low and slow. It's hard to be comfortable in someone's skin when they're breathing in their chest. And just on that presentation side note, the goal for people when it comes to presenting is for you to enjoy yourself up there. It's undeniable when someone is enjoying giving a presentation or a talk, and there's only one way to do that, and that's for you to be relaxed. And a lot of that comes down to breathing.
Yeah, that's the second time you've had me thinking about pace today. We talked about our mutual friend, Angelo Cisco, and even just listening to you talk now, both of you guys have a rate of speech that is a little bit slower and a little bit more deliberate, which I find to be soothing, but also like it projects confidence. And the funny thing is I think that so many people, I got to get it out. I only have so much time to get this message across. And, when I think about my own behavior, it's like, well, just behave like the people whom you respect. Are they up there rushed? Are they breathing shallow? Are they, nervous to be up there talking? Or is it the most natural thing in the world for them to talk about something that, of course, they can speak to because it's part of their expertise, right? That's really fascinating. It's something that I think everybody has heard of positive self-talk, of not doing soft talk or some version of that. I think people have heard of breathing deeply and enjoying yourself up there. But I think I love so much to be able to talk to somebody who's willing to open the book and dial it back to its smallest effective parts, right? I think so few people are willing to break things down the way that you do. And I think that's really interesting. So how did we get here? At what point did you decide that language and coaching was going to be the path for you? Maybe give us your entrepreneur origin story, if you don't mind.
Fallen in love twice on site.
Okay.
The first one. So I wrestled in high school, and we briefly talked about fighting before we started recording. So I wrestled in high school, and that was cool. It was good, cool enough to do. I pin you, you pin me. One fateful day, spring semester, 1996, freshman year of college, and he ended up fighting BJ Penn for the lightweight strap in the UFC early 2000s, a guy named Paul Creighton.
Okay.
He was teaching one of the classes, and at the end he said, "Are there any wrestlers in the room?" And I raised my hand, and he said, "We do Brazilian jiu-jitsu twice a week, Tuesday and Thursday. You should come out." I'm like, cool. I got the first UFC in 1993. You right? Right?
Me too. I didn't want to interrupt you, but yeah, me too.
Dude, that's cool.
Yeah.
I mean, come on. First round that's when everybody was like, oh my God, this guy got kicked in the face and lost a tooth. It was just for the right kind of person. It was amazing.
Sure.
And so I go to this jujitsu class, and this guy chokes me. And I was like, this is the coolest thing I've ever seen in my life. Yeah. So I started training immediately, and shortly thereafter started competing. I had 6 MMA fights, won a couple of kickboxing titles, state champion for a couple of years. And then I'm like, okay, cool. I'm going to go to Thailand for a year and polish up on my skills and come back and go pro as an MMA fighter. So I move over there, and 6 months in, I'm on the operating table once again, having my second knee surgery. And you know what? Let's bring this back to breathing. I definitively say this. I cut my fighting career short because I had super bad breathing mechanics, because I was fueling a lot of the reason that I was doing the things that I was doing with that sport was to prove that I wasn't scared. Okay. Because part of me was still scared and angry that I was scared. I ran away from a couple of fights in elementary school, and those memories haunted me for God knows how long. I got bullied a little bit in middle school, and I'm like, oh no. And so I just I'm going to prove them. I'll show them, like, all this crazy talk that kept me stressed and pissed off, breathing in my chest. And then you go train hard, doing anything with bad breathing mechanics, things are going to start breaking. So I had my second knee surgery. I was in a lot of pain. The doctor said, your career as a fighter's over. And I straight up believed him. So darkness descended, and I didn't laugh for it. It's a very weird experience. And I also stayed over there. I lived over there for a decade. It still sounds weird to say. And a large part of that reason is, if I can't be the fighter back in Virginia, I'll be a nobody over here than not being able to be that. I was addicted to the identity. I loved it. So I stayed over there, and I was an elementary school sports teacher at the American School of Bangkok International School. Great gig. Loved the kids, super fun, for 5 years. And after a year of being miserable, somebody told me about this detox resort, this cleansing resort down on the island of Koh Samui. They're doing these cleansing programs. You go down there and drink these weird green shakes and detox pills, and you do yoga and steam room, and you come out feeling better. And I was like, you know what? I'll go do that. So I'll see what's up with that. And I went down, felt better, and kept going. My third trip down there was when I fell in love on site for the second time. So Mark, in all his wisdom, this guy's like, hey man, there's a dude doing an emotional detoxification workshop tonight. You should go. And I'm like, emotional detoxification. I mean, I laughed at it. I did go though. Very glad. And the gentleman, Barry Musgrave, who was giving the presentation, ended up becoming my first mentor in this work. Guess what he talked about? He talked about words and stories and identities. And then he asked, is anyone hung up on a story? And this woman just shot her hand right up. She told this legit stinger breakup story. Her and her girlfriends get a house down at the beach for beach week. Her boyfriend and his friends get the house next door, add a bunch of alcohol, press play. One night he hooked up with her best friend in front of everybody. And then the next night dumped her in front of everybody. So, ouch. Sure. And 4 years later, she's still very hurt about it. And he had her tell this story 3 times. The first time, he just let her run it. And at the end, she's angry and crying. Second time, he started to make some adjustments in the language. Okay. And now she's sad. So he's de-escalating the situation by making some changes in the words. And now she's sad and no tears. And the third time through, he stopped her because he knew the words and he knew the angles. He stopped her at the Lord of the Rings sentence, Jason, the linchpin, the one that bound the whole thing together, which was, he did that to me. I'm going to say that one more time, folks. He did that to me. He had her say it a couple of times out loud. So everybody's staring at the same sentence. And then he said, that last word, me, take out me and put in himself. And it took her a second. It was awkward. It was such a radical departure from the story that she had told so many times externally and even way more internally. He did that to himself? It goes up at the end. It's a question. And then you see her talk and walk herself into a very different story. The breath loosens up. He did do that to himself. And then she just goes off about how this guy's social credit score took a digger and he lost friends and it was this. And then she goes, once she got through that, she goes, yeah, I wasn't going to work out anyway. That guy was actually pretty weird. And I saw that and I said, that's not my story, but that's my story. And I was so closed. So he facilitated that, told us what to do, paired us up. And he's like, okay, you share a story. And then the other person switches and shares a story. And I'm listening to this woman talk about something. I forget what it was about. And then it comes time for me to share. And I said, oh, hell no. I got up and left. I said, I'm sorry. I'm not doing this. Yeah. Because I was just so guarded, dude. I was so guarded. I was so rigid. I was just so pissed off. I'm not starting this story that would take more than the 10 minutes we have to talk about it. But I did take action. I got up and went straight to an internet cafe. They had those things back in the day. And I printed off an 81-page manual on how to do this work on your own. This was in 2003. And I went back to my bungalow and I read the whole thing and I started. And I started working on stories related to fighting. And I was working on stories that were unrelated to fighting. And I found myself feeling better about these stories. And I'm like, well, guess what? Here's another way that I can participate different and better in the story I tell myself to myself about myself. So Webster's, the current definition of identity is the fact of being who or what a person is. Okay. That's a very easy, by the way, that's a very easy definition to dispel, which means to cast out. I would imagine, and I did this on stage in front of 1,800 people on our TEDx presentation. I would imagine, I definitely can say this. I would imagine, Jason, you see yourself differently now than when you were 5.
Sure. Yeah, definitely.
So if we are the fact of being who or what a person is, no, identity is an ongoing process. It's an ongoing story that we participate in. Most people's language is working against them and they have no idea because this is an education issue. That's it. It has nothing to do with deservance or intelligence. Mark England or Einstein, okay, believes the sentence, he did that to me, I'm getting the victim villain mental imagery and a stress response. It has zero to do with intelligence. And so most people's language, it tricks them to being innocent bystanders in their life. It puts them in the stands. One of the ways to describe what we do is we teach people how to use their language to work for them and get them in the arena and take some action and rack up some losses and rack up some wins and learn some things and get better as you go. And people respond very well to what we do. I'll give us a little bit of credit. We've done a good job of demystifying this conversation. Okay. I'm known as Mr. Simple behind the scenes because I just am, dude.
Yeah.
By design. Like I was a horrible student. Horrible. Because I didn't care about what was being taught. And like stuff goes over my head real quick. We've demystified the conversation about identity and language, and we've also gamified it. So we've made it fun. You want to play a language game real quick?
Sure. Yeah.
Cool. Do you have a pen?
I do. I have a dry erase marker. And then I want to get back to some other stuff after too.
Perfect. This is something that your audience can do too, everybody. We're going to play a one-word game.
Okay.
Write this statement down, Jason, everybody else. Just if you're not driving, how can I ever get over this?
Okay.
How can I ever get over this?
Okay.
Read that, please, Jason, and tell me how it feels to say it.
How can I ever get over this? Well, it feels like it's unlikely that I will get over this, whatever this is.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Whatever the thing is. And now take your magic wand. I'll talk more about that in a second. And we're just going to scratch out one word, folks. We're taking one word out of the sentence. Scratch out the word ever.
Okay. How can I get over this? Better, for sure.
Right?
Yeah.
What's the difference for you?
Well, the ever, I think to me, maybe implies like it's forever, right? And so it's like, how can I ever make $1 billion? How can I ever get over this, whatever thing? Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
It's so that word right there turns the drama, just one word, turns the drama way up. And when people say it, especially if they strongly emotionalize, yeah, fine. There's a question mark at the end of that sentence. It's not a question, though. It's a statement of I'm screwed. How can I ever get over this?
Yeah.
It's a presupposition. It presupposes I can't. So then my reticular activating system, which I can talk about if you want, that goes into it stops looking for any answers. Okay. We take out and then we sit down into resignation, not fun. We take that one word out. How can I get over this? Drama way down. It's also a presupposition. It presupposes I can get over it. So my reticular activating system starts looking for exits or solutions. That's what I'm talking about our language putting us in the stands, tricking us into being innocent bystanders. And just with a little bit of education, like I said, it's an educational issue, with a little bit of education about how to pay more attention to what you think, say, and write, and start taking out some easy words that you can do quite easily, things get a lot more interesting and practical for your mindset.
Yeah, I can see that. And I've been practicing it a little bit this week, especially, but also just periodically through my career. I want to go back to a little bit about what you were talking about in this transition from being, a fighter. I think there is a tale as old as time of like the warrior's transition, right? And I think it happens to everybody. You and I are probably more familiar with it from a male perspective, but certainly females go through a very similar life cycle. I can't probably speak to it as well, but I definitely have seen it, especially as part of a physical culture for so many years, see that transition. And it seems like you were kind of presented with it in this very finite, like in no uncertain terms, this is now over. Maybe speak a little bit more to like, do you think, had you been better equipped for that earlier, do you think that it would have softened that transition? Or maybe just talk a little bit about that transition, because it seems like you went through it maybe sooner than some of us do. I'm just curious. I'd like to hear a little bit more about what that transition was like for you, because it's something that so many people face, but maybe not from the perspective of like a professional fighter.
Yeah, it was very jarring. And it was also talk about a letdown, bro. Talk about a buzzkill. This is in 2002. It was very rare for people to go over there. No one from that we knew in our fight circle, and everybody knew I was going. It was a big deal. I had sending off parties, plural, and it was the highest. It was me going from the highest high because I fought my last fight 10 days before I went over there and won. So there's that extra. And it was the fastest descent from something up high to crash and burn. And I used that as the proof, the evidence, the final evidence, okay, that there was something wrong with me and I was somehow doomed to fail. And I was not good enough and this was never going to work. Why would you ever think this was going to work for you? Because I had these thoughts running in the periphery. Sometimes they were louder, sometimes they were quieter. Okay. Trained when I was hurt. The only time I took a day off was when I was too hungover, okay, to fight. And I'd still, most of the time I would just down a glass of Agent Orange, Ultimate Orange. Was that? Yeah, Ultimate Orange.
I'm not sure.
A long time ago.
Yeah.
It's one of those pre-workouts. It was like the first pre-workout, Ultimate Orange.
Back in the day with, there was another one of those that was big. I'm trying to think of what it was.
Twins Speed Stacker.
They were just selling steroids back then at those shops.
Big time. Up Your Gas.
Yeah.
It was Up Your Gas. Ripped Fuel by Twin Labs.
That's the one I was thinking of. Ripped Fuel was just crack.
I would roll out of bed and handful water, go to class. And by the end of class, I'd be like this to go. And this is like 8 a.m. Sure. Way to just ease into the day, bro. That's going to age real well. And yeah, to bring it back to, if I had been better prepared, I would have, for that transition, I wouldn't have gotten in that transition, if that makes sense. Because I wouldn't have been, if I had had the language tools to deal with that going from fighter to not fighter prior to moving over there, or even when I started training, it would have been a different experience. I would have been smoother about it. I would have definitely been breathing better. I would have been kinder to myself. Okay.
You know, just one thing that makes me think of is there's this thing, both maybe for beauty, but also for ability, right? Is it's just given to you in some ways. Like you're saying, you were training every single day unless you were hungover. Well, neither of us could do that today, right? And I think there maybe is something where you're incapable of valuing this thing that you have until it's been challenged or taken away, right? And I think, even just talking before the call, and I know a little bit about your practice, I think you work with a lot of people in the fitness industry. Is that safe to say?
Yeah.
And I'm convinced that our industry is so unique for a few reasons. From an entrepreneurial reason, the great thing about fitness is everybody that does it loves it. Not every insurance salesman is, head over heels in love with the insurance, but every CrossFit coach is in love with CrossFit, right? But the other thing is our words as coaches translate into action in the real world in a very physical and finite way at every level, not just the visionary entrepreneur who says, I see it this way, abracadabra, which I'm sure we'll hit on in a second. And then it happens. But in fitness, it's like, no, push your hips back when you squat. No, do this. Actually, your words are so much more powerful there. And so immediately when I meet somebody like you, there's 100 scenarios that I can think of where my language could have been better, cleaner, more effective at using techniques and technologies like you're talking about. So maybe speak a little bit to, the abracadabra, whether it's from fitness or just kind of taking your words and manifesting them into reality. Because I do think that some of our listeners at home, it would be easy for them to maybe not value this type of conversation as high as it should be, because it's like, oh, that's the secret. You just put a dream board up and you expect a Lamborghini to show up in your parking lot. And I loved everything about the course and in this conversation so far, because it's rooted in so much more than that. So maybe if you could kind of speak a little bit to sort of the abracadabra of it all.
Okay, perfect. In 2018, I was thinking of what angle to take.
Sure.
In 2018, I'm walking out my front door one morning to go give a presentation. And I'm Mr. Early. And so I'm early, getting out the front door, rehearsing in my head. And I walk over to where my car was parked the night before. And it's gone. And it dawns on me. It took a hot second. It dawns on me, that is where I parked my car last night, and it is not there now.
Oh, no.
Yeah. So I like, what? Get out my phone and I call the cops. I said, help. Somebody stole my car. Hold on, buddy. We're coming. And then I call my father and I said, Dad, this is really weird. Somebody stole my SUV. I've got stuff to do. So I was in Richmond and he has a farm about an hour and a half away. And I said, I need the farm truck. He goes, come on and get it. So 1995, my father purchased 1985 Ford F-150, 2 tones of brown. We call it Brown and Browner.
Love it.
It's been in mint condition the whole time. And It stays out at the farm underneath the canopy. So I go get Brown and Browner, drive Brown and Browner into Richmond. And within 24 hours, I start to see that 1985-ish Ford F-150s all over the place. A lot of people, a lot. It's almost 100% can attest to this. They've had the same experience. They buy a new car and they start to see that car all over the place. Has you ever had that?
I got an 87 F-150 out in the lot. So,
Dude,
but but yes, I do see them all over. Yeah.
Dude, exactly. Yeah. And the reticular activating system, which we're going to tie Abracadabra into a little bit later, because it doesn't negation, acknowledge, mean magic, folks. There's way more to it than that. So the reticular activating system is involved in that phenomenon. And anyone in person that has a interest in personal and professional development, anyone, this is my take it or leave it, that works with people, that coaches people, I use that word very rarely and I use it accurately here. You need to know about the reticular activating system because your clients have one of these and it is absolutely influencing how they see themselves and their ability to get results. So the reticular activating system, it's this piece of hardware in the brain that once it gets programmed with something and it's neutral, once we focus on something, put our awareness on something and it is deemed important, the reticular activating system goes on a search and edit mission. So for me, at that particular moment, 1985 Ford F-150s, the RAS comes online. It goes, okay, find more of those vehicles. And while you're doing that, I'm going to edit out anything that's not that. So I don't remember seeing any red Volkswagens, no blue Oldsmobiles, nothing, because it's not the thing I'm looking for. And this is one of the most well-studied phenomenons in social psychology. The number one study is called the invisible gorilla. And you can still see the original 1-minute video on YouTube. Just type in invisible gorilla. Here's a spoiler alert. They took 7 college students. It was a 1-minute video, dressed 3 in white, dressed 3 in black, and 1 in a gorilla costume. They gave the white team 2 basketballs, the black team 2 basketballs, and they passed the basketballs back and forth amongst themselves. They filmed this for, like I said, 1 minute. 30 seconds in, the student in the gorilla costume walks into the middle of everything. It's plain as day when you know to look for it. Turns and looks at the camera, beats his chest, and turns and walks out. Then they showed this video to tens and tens, hundreds of thousands of people, and they direct their attention. They give them something to do. Question: how many times did the white team pass the basketballs back and forth to each other? And they show them the video. And then whatever their answer is their answer. And at the end, they go, oh, by the way, did you happen to see the gorilla? 50% of people edit out something so seemingly obvious as a gorilla because they were focused somewhere else and they weren't expecting it. Now, the question, and the reticular activating system, it's also involved in, most people have had this experience as well. You hear something surprisingly positive about a person, and then you see them in person sometime after that, and you hear this thing about them. It changes the way you see them in your imagination, and you see them and you're even more excited to see them. Or you hear something surprisingly negative about someone. It changes the way you see them in your imagination, and so it changes the way that you interact with them when they show up. That's the reticular activating system too. There is also a noise that's annoying. And once you recognize that, once it becomes annoying to you, you can't stop hearing it. You ever had that?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Reticular activating system. So here's two, and it works both ways, folks. Here's 2 stories. I'll make it quick. A tale of 2 stories. Because guess what? Some of the things that's in the way of your clients getting the results that they want have nothing to do with fitness. And they're coming from other places. A lot of your clients are battling their demons. We even have the language. I'm going to exercise my demons. Okay, exercise. If I don't get a workout in, I'll die. There's something to be looked at there. So a tale of two stories, because this does bring up abracadabra, I'll tell you now. And it also brings up spells and magic. So the definition, when most people hear the word abracadabra, they think magic. There, like I said, there's more to it than that. Abracadabra is Aramaic, which is an ancient language. It's still spoken in some parts of the Middle East. It was the language the original Old Testament was written in, as one of the two languages that Jesus spoke. And it translates to, with my word I create, or with my word I influence. I like the second. With my word I influence. With my words I influence. What? What do I influence? More rocket science. We focus on four main aspects of our experience of ourselves when it comes to what our language influences. Our imagination, our feelings and emotions, our posture, we're going to keep it very simple, and our breathing. Our language influences those things immediately, all simultaneously at the same time. And most people, due to a lack of education about how their language works and influences them, and due to the fact that the way the English language is used in general, it's used very quickly. And so just like running wind sprints, you run wind sprints, you're like tunnel vision, there's no mental real estate to think about stuff. When we use our language very quickly, it makes it hard to connect the dots between what words are forcing us to see things in certain ways, what words are creating the stuck. And so that's part of the benefit from slowing down from time to time. Gives you that space to be able to connect some dots. This woman comes in. There's a negative side of the coin. Oh, but the spell. So let's do those three definitions real quick. So we got abracadabra on the table, and the metaphysicians of the day, they knew it. They would triangulate. You can look this stuff up. Please do, folks. They would triangulate abracadabra and wear it around their neck as in an amulet to remind them of the power and the mechanism of the spoken word, because they knew if their language was working against them, whatever they wanted to do in their life was going to be unnecessarily hard. And also the flip side, if they got their language working for them, you can go do some quite astonishing things. The definition of a spell, this is Webster's definition, not mine. A word or a combination of words of great influence. That's it. That's the definition of a spell. I'm not good enough is a combination of words that greatly influences people. I'll get there if I keep showing up is a combination of words that will greatly influence people. And then there's magic. The definition of magic, it is the ability to apparently alter the course of events using supernatural forces. It's not the ability to do it. It's the apparent ability to do it. And you said something about a little earlier about this technology. It's a knowledge. It's a technical knowledge, technique. Robert N. Heinlein said, the one man's magic is another man's technology. Supernatural is a null word. And when someone knows how to use their language and build them up and keep them in the game and keep their emotional endurance high and keep the drama low, and they lock that in and maintain it for a couple of decades, just everybody's like, how do you do it? Is it magic or is it a technology? So this woman comes in and sits down. This was like year 2, early days. And she was very forthcoming with her story. She said, I'm having problems in my marriage. My husband thinks I'm attractive and I refuse to believe him. And I know where it's coming from. I just don't know what to do about it. I said, tell me more. She said she's 10 years old, walks in to her family goes to her grandparents' house for Christmas. She walks in the back door. As soon as she walks in, her great aunt is standing right there. And her great aunt leans down and goes, Ma, you have a big nose, just like me. Thanks for that. Little girl, stress response, runs into the bathroom. What do you think the first thing she looked at when she looked in the mirror was? Her nose, which is no bigger now than it was 5 seconds ago. But in her imagination, reticular activating system, she's now got a honker which means she's ugly, which means, oh, you're ugly. I'm going to go find all the other faults real quick, and I'm going to edit out all the positive things and all the compliments that and you can see how this would play out. It's like, damn, baby, you look good. You don't really mean that.
Right.
That's going to cause some problems on both sides of the street. And there are, like I said, the reticular activating system, it is completely impartial. There are expansive spells and there are constrictive spells. That is an example of a constrictive spell, as in it activated a stress response, sympathetic nervous system response, trapped the breath. Good luck changing your client's mind about anything while their breath is trapped in the chest. You're going to get the nods. You're going to get the smiles. You're going to get the social niceties. Because this is mechanical, folks. When my breath is trapped in my chest, I'm stressed about something. It's called amygdala hijack. My listening ability goes down, way down. I lose access to my creative faculties, literally my peripheral vision too. I get fixated. I get tunnel vision on something. And there's very little mental real estate for me to consider other options. As the breath descends, then we become more psychologically and emotionally malleable. We become open. We become open and receptive. And we zoom out. We can see bigger pictures. And so that constrictive spell, cramped, stressed, tense, tight. 2014, I'm giving a presentation. This guy's setting up a booth next to me. He heard the whole thing and he comes up afterwards. He goes, man, that was great. I liked all of that. You want to hear a great story? Who says no to that? Oh, great story? No, keep that away from me. And he goes, I was 13 years old. Is it okay if I drop an F-bomb?
Please do.
Okay. One's coming, folks. Get ready. And he said, my grandfather took me out in the backyard. And he said, I forget the guy's name. Let's call him Dave. Little Davey, life's wild. There's going to be twists and turns and zigs and zags and ups and downs. And you're going to get some things right and you're going to get some things wrong. Just always remember to err on the side of being a badass motherfucker. And he said his whole, Grandpa spelled him with an F-bomb. He said his life changed in that moment. He said he looked up, things are looking up. And he said, I saw myself in my imagination as capable and confident. And I took this big breath in and it felt like I got bigger energetically. And he goes, I've made a lot of mistakes. I've gotten things right. I learn as I go. I go after what I want. And I like being me. And I'm listening to this. I'm like, dude, you should be teaching this stuff.
Yeah.
As my business partner says, if you enjoy being you, then you're winning. And it's really hard to enjoy being me or anyone when our breath is trapped in our chest. It's a very uncomfortable place to reside. And most people's breath is trapped in their chest. We're known as the language people. Push comes to shove. And we might as well be known as the language and the breathing people because we talk about it all throughout every certification, every podcast I go on. I mean, it's inextricably linked, of course, our language. We're basically walking accordions, walking around making noises and things. And, push comes to shove. It's about the breath. We help people use their language in better, more conscious ways to unlock their breathing. You win the breathing game, you win the whole game.
Today's show is brought to you by High Level CRM. High Level is an all-in-one platform designed to help entrepreneurs grow their businesses without the need for multiple softwares or an IT team. Not only does their easy-to-use software allow you to track and manage your leads throughout each phase of the relationship, but it also allows you to build funnels, track stats, and more. Guys, I sat down and added up the cost of software I was able to replace with just one app, and it was over $1,000 per month. Because this is an all-in-one application, I also save a ton of headaches connecting apps and building automations, and the team at Go High Level does a great job of getting you started quickly and easily when you sign on. I cannot more highly recommend these guys. Right now, Spear and Clover listeners get a free 14-day trial of High Level CRM for themselves. Click the link in our show notes to support the show and get started on your free 14-day trial today. I'm super excited that today's show is brought to you by the Global School of Entrepreneurship. Most practicing entrepreneurs cannot take 2 years away from their growing business to attend a full-time campus-based program or spend every weekend away from family and business for a couple of years. Finally, there's an accredited program specifically designed for you to work on and grow your business while completing your MBA. The GSE MBA complements the needs and schedules of someone actively engaged in an entrepreneurial venture while still covering the accredited curriculum expected from any MBA program. The Global School of Entrepreneurship offers a unique offering called the Mastermind to MBA program. It consists of 10 students who work together in a forum-style cohort and meet every other week for a year. The GSE MBA helps you develop skills in critical thinking and strategic planning. Students also develop competencies in leadership, decision-making, and communication with both employees as well as the important stakeholders in your business. You will be exposed to world-class academics and fascinating guest lecturers. You'll work on your business while working in your business. Students are guided by real-world entrepreneurs with decades of experience starting and scaling businesses just like yours. Best of all, I'm beyond proud to announce that the Global School of Entrepreneurship has agreed to offer one Spear and Clover listener a scholarship to join an upcoming Mastermind to MBA cohort. They are looking for someone just like you to bring a unique perspective to the program, and they are accepting applications right now. To learn more and to apply, simply go to www.gse.mba/spear. That's www.gse.mba/spear. Don't miss this opportunity to level yourself up and surround yourself with other like-minded entrepreneurs just like you. Once again, to apply for the GSE MBA Spear and Clover Scholarship, simply visit www.gse.mba/spear. That's www.gse.mba/spear. Today's show is brought to you by Scaling with Media. I mean, literally, like if it weren't for the folks at Scaling with Media, you would not be getting this. Scaling with Media is a truly revolutionary company for any entrepreneur who wants to reach a larger audience without taking on the years of experience necessary to master the required skills. These guys do it all. From helping you develop your creative plan to editing, sourcing content, copywriting, ads management, and way more. Whether you're looking to launch a YouTube channel or podcast, or you just want to scale your business out to more eyeballs, these guys are the absolute best one-stop shop. But that's not all. Right now, Spear and Clover listeners who sign up for their brand launch package will receive a free professional grade studio kit that I'm actually recording right now on. The studio kit includes a professional microphone, stand, lighting, and headphones, and is worth well over $500. Take action now by going to scalingwithmedia.com/spear and claim your free studio kit. Again, that's scalingwithmedia.com/spear, scalingwithmedia.com/spear. Now back to the show. Yeah, there's so much behind that kind of parasympathetic response. What would maybe just on that point, because that's come up multiple times. I'll tell you what, it's interesting. You know, I have a fitness background, but this is a general entrepreneurs podcast, right? And I've heard two things over and over and over again already. We're about 35 shows in. One is breathing and two is jujitsu. And I did jujitsu this morning. I'm an avid white belt, but love it, love it, love it.
Rad. I rolled on Tuesday.
Oh yeah, that's great. Yeah, I mean, one, what's a great resource for breathing? If I have a couple of questions that I want to make sure we get out tactically to the people listening. And then two, why do you think jujitsu collects such cool people, such interesting, dynamic, kind of visionary type people?
Good question. Breathing, the Wim Hof method.
Yeah.
So I was in a special ed class with this dude, not Wim Hof, this guy named Brandon Powell. Wouldn't that be funny? Yeah. My Think Breakfast Club for the entire year. So Midlothian Middle School, 1986, they took the 12 weirdest, most disorganized, disruptive kids, and they stuck them in the top floor of this annexed building. And instead of 6 45-minute classes, they had 3 1.5-hour classes, all in the same classroom. They thought, we're going to keep these kids in the same classroom. It'll help them focus. Mm-hmm. Turns out, no. We only saw everybody else for PE and lunch. So I came out of there. That was part of I was so pissed because I thought I was stupid.
Yeah.
And Brandon Powell was in there. Brandon Powell he's the premier Wim Hof instructor in the United States. Level 3 Wim Hof instructor. Good luck. Go finding one of those.
Yeah.
And they bring him in every year. He just brings the magic, dude. He's a musician. He's a vocalist. He's a percussionist, 2nd-degree black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu also, by the way. If you'd like to have him on the show, I'm happy to introduce you to him.
Yeah, I would love that for sure. I learned it from Brian McKenzie, also a big Wim Hof guy.
Yeah, dude, right on. And you know who's a big Brandon Powell fan? Angelo Cisco. He had him out to O'Hare CrossFit a number of times.
Yeah. And for what it's worth, I spent 4 years in a situation like that for school as well, in a one contained class with people from multiple different grades in these we had no summer breaks. And honestly, it's a very interesting experience, but it's interesting that we both had that shared experience.
Yeah. I was just so bored. I was so bored in school. Kids are not designed to sit for hours and hours a day. I mean, you being a fitness expert in the industry, I think a lot of people's bad movement patterns and also bad breathing patterns, because they go hand in hand. A lot of people's dysfunctional movement patterns comes from that tremendous amount of sitting when they're children. It's a real bitch to unlearn that, physiologically speaking. I mean, because the body is, body memory. And so Brandon, he messaged me in 2015 and said, "Hey, dude, you got to check out Wim Hof." This is before he went on Rogan for the first time. Yeah. And I'm like, "What's a Wim Hof?" And he goes, "No, dummy, it's a person." And so I watched Brandon go through all 3 levels. I'm the biggest Brandon Powell goon out there. I've promoted and organized his first 4 workshops, and now he's at the very top of the game. So follow that dude on Instagram, Brandon Powell 369, and check out Wim Hof check out Inside the Superhuman World of the Iceman. That's the Vice documentary that came out before he went on Rogan and got him famous. This dude does superhuman shit. And yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Yeah, he's also got a great app that I have on my phone that's very effective. I'm just always interested in this breathing practice for sure. The Wim Hof breathing method is what I would call my first psychedelic experience. Was on a Thursday morning and in San Diego around a pool with a bunch of guys. And I was transported. And I think I held my breath for like 4.5 minutes or something crazy with a very little bit of practice, but it's transformational for sure.
Y'all are going to feel that. Like there's back to that saying, she who feels it knows it. You will feel. You do a 30-minute Wim Hof breathing set, you're going to feel that.
Oh yeah.
And it's also very likely going to jar some things loose in your nervous system. So on a side note, when any animal, and we are animals, when any animal goes through a process of domestication, we lose our innate ability to kick out stress out of our nervous system, and it impacts, it gets stored, trapped. So you'll see this. You ever seen a little lap dog with 3 hairs and 1 snaggle tooth, and it's 80 degrees out and it's just sitting there shaking? That thing used to be a wolf 2,000 years ago. Yeah. Okay. And through a process of domestication, it's turned into that thing, which is just a bag of nerves. We're facing that collective, generally speaking, as people, as humans. And so when people do the Wim Hof method, a lot of times you'll have an emotional response. You'll have feeling, your hands will claw up like that and lock them in. All very normal, all very natural, all good, because you want that out. We're designed to thrive being in parasympathetic nervous system most of the time. We're not designed to redline and stay up there. Okay. You find we can do that. You want to get in there, get in, get out, get the job done, and then come back down. Okay. A lot of people are just, so absolutely Wim Hof, and then jujitsu. There's something to be said about the type of person that will show up repeatedly to get their ass kicked, knowing they're going to get their ass kicked. It is it might be the number one way to check in with yourself, because you're going to get humbled. Okay. You're going to get balled up, choked, arm locked, the whole thing. And it's super accessible. It's just point of direction. There's a jujitsu gym pretty much anywhere in the United States within a 30-mile radius of wherever you are. So you can go get this stuff. It's not like football, the NFL. People watch football. You can't, what are you going to go, like, huh, what? But I am a UFC freak show, dude. I don't follow any other sports. I could care less. Okay. MMA forever. And it gets the victim mentality under control and majorly contained. Because not only are you being humbled in the process, you're also building a very real confidence. You learn to fight, you got that in your back pocket. Okay. Even when you're out of shape. Okay.
Just to add just a little bit to that, just as reaction is, my experience has been for so many people that maybe aren't like you and I. Like you and I sound like we're peas in a pod when it comes to that. I've always liked the UFC. I've always liked fighting stuff. I always like boxing and physical stuff. But it also it divorces anger and fear from violence and physicality. I think that I've watched that change people quickly, men and women, particularly women, but men and women. They go from this very victimized, like, I ball up when somebody aggresses on me, to like, oh, there is an answer to this. That's the beauty of it is. And I think that's why really intelligent people, guys like Lex Friedman or whatever, these guys that are, black belts that are in jiu-jitsu, I think. And then on top of that, you can fight to the death and nobody gets hurt 99.9% of the time, right? You can't really do that in kickboxing. You can't really do that in Krav Maga even. I'm breaking fingers. I'm kicking people in the groin, whatever. With jiu-jitsu, like, man, I bring it every single match that it's appropriate. And we hug afterwards and almost never is anybody injured. I think there's some beauty to that as well. But the big one, I think, for me is when you separate, not to answer my own question, but when you separate fear and anger from violence and physicality, all of a sudden you see the world kind of as it should be, which is just people and animals, like you said, moving about, doing their thing. And there's so much less fear. Now, maybe guys like me and you wouldn't have been walking around with that fear, but I think a lot of people do. And I think that permeates that victim mentality that we've talked about a little bit today too. I think that's just such a beautiful art form.
Sure. I mean, the world is a safer place when you know how to defend yourself. Okay.
Absolutely.
And it creates a legit situational awareness. And there's also the community factor too. Sure. Isolation will breed some very strange behaviors in people. And, people, and we do, we do a lot of walking in the certification. So like everyone has a 45-minute solo walk, no devices each week on all of our certifications to go do, because people are understep and people are also underhugged, in my opinion. And so it's physical contact. So you go in there and you get to roll around with 4 or 5, a number of different people. It brings the community aspects to it. Some of my favorite people that will always be in my life are some of my old training partners, man. We'll get together and it's more than friends. It's a logical family in a sense. We have a biological family and we have a logical family. And I very much appreciate being able to at least put up a fight, There's something very real about that. I could go on in that direction. And
but to that point, it's so much easier to lead with love when you know that violence isn't a problem, right? I mean, I went to I've said this before on the show, but I went to a weekend with Tim Kennedy and his sheepdog response course. And it was just awesome. Dude, go, just go. It's great. And I know now he's done so many things since, where he's opened his own studio and he's got a school for kids. But
that dude's such a stud.
He and everybody there was who you pray and hope are the people that are guarding the gates of our country, because there was some of our municipalities. There was cops and there was police officers, like SWAT team folks and military folks. And these are the highest level people. And they're the kindest, you talk about physicality, just coming up behind you, giving you a big hug. And we met 20 minutes ago. And just seeing that love come out of just the security of being trained killers. I just thought that was such an indicative thing. And then, I've had the pleasure of rolling with a bunch of black belts, as I'm sure you have as well. And there's no more loving than when a black belt rolls with a white belt and both have fun. There's no more kindness than that, right?
100%, man. Yeah. And the dominance hierarchy, that's a very real thing. Our man Jordan Peterson talks about that. And when I like being around savages. I like being around those kinds of people that it's in their back pocket. I know it. And we lead with warmth and hugs and just, that's how we roll. Yeah. Another great Jordan Peterson quote that's very relevant to this conversation. He said, "You think strong men are dangerous? Wait till you see what a weak man will do." That's something to noodle on.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, especially, you think about, any topic that's been topical in the news, whether it's police stuff or, anything. Imagine, how much more, like if my only option is to grab my gun, we're in trouble because there's so many opportunities for that to happen. So kind of shifting gears, if I'm an entrepreneur watching this and I'm not a part of the physical culture, I don't own a gym, I'm not a jiu-jitsu practitioner, what are maybe 3 to 5 things that I can do today that are actionable, that'll start to put my mindset and my communication with folks at work and my leadership kind of back on the right path? Because I know a lot of this stuff is really simple, and we've been fortunate enough to dig a little into it today. But I want to cut back to just what are the simple, maybe 3 to 5 things that I can start doing right now that are eventually going to lead to more productive communication and sort of success.
Got it. You mind if I give us 2 layups? I mean, layups,
Please.
slam dunks.
Yeah,
okay,
of course.
Cool. So I get asked this question a lot. What do we do? How do we implement this?
Sure.
And I have a macro answer and I have a micro answer. The macro answer is to slow down your rate of speech by about 20%. Okay. From time to time, and watch what happens. Okay. When we slow down our rate of speech, the breathing, the breath begins to descend. Okay. And what will happen is that your listening skills will improve. Okay. Which is a very important part of effective leadership, in my opinion, is being able to listen. Your rhythm and timing will also improve. Okay. Because a conversation, it's like a ping pong match. Okay. And you want to find someone that you can have a nice little run with. And when we slow down our rate of speech a little bit, it gives us this better rhythm, this better timing. You'll also give yourself that, like I said previously, that extra space, that extra mental real estate to start connecting the dots between how your language is influencing you for better and for worse. And from there, you can make choices to start using less of these words and more of these words. And you're also going to sound better. You're going to sound more confident because you're breathing better. They go hand in hand. And what I've found is most people prefer to speak a little bit slower once they become conscious of it than their rate of speech when they were unconscious about it. I absolutely fall into that category. So does Angelo Cisco. When I connected those dots, so let's just go 20 years ago. My rate of speech 20 years ago, I speak about 20% slower right now, give or take, than I did back then. And what it does, it also gives me the range. So I can start speaking fast and get really excited about the things that I'm really excited about, and get up here. And then I can also slow it down when it's time to make the important points. And someone that speaks as fast as possible, like you said earlier, because I got to get it out. I'm just going to keep talking until I say something smart, because look at the words. I need them to understand me. Yeah. I need them to understand me. Take out them and put in me. I need me to understand me. And when you come across someone who understands themselves, or at least understands the story they're telling, that's a different kind of person. So the macro answer is slow down your rate of speech just a little bit. Watch what happens. Okay. You'll feel it. And then the specific answer, back to soft talk, it's called the soft talk challenge. So I'm going to rattle off, this is roughly 10 soft talk keywords. Everybody at home, get a pen, get a clean sheet of paper. And I want you to write these words 5 times larger than you normally write. What's that going to do? Remember the reticular activating system? The reticular activating system will go, hey, why am I writing these words down 5 times larger than I normally? Oh, it doesn't matter. Just pay more attention to them. Okay. And then you take this piece of paper and you stick it up somewhere that you're going to see it at least once a day for 7 days. That's it. And what that's going to do, it's going to raise your awareness about these key words. And it all starts with awareness. Once you have that raised awareness, you'll start plucking them out. It's the easiest place to start, because all you do is take the words out. Okay. You'll take them out of and it shows up first in emails and texts. Okay. We've been doing this a long time. It's absolutely this consistent feedback. Oh, my email game has gone way up. Emails become shorter. They become easier to respond to. I mean, who likes getting an email with this 3 pages long with 17 things in them. No, and then it's like I said, a better ping pong match. So here are the soft talk keywords. Write them big, everybody. Think, maybe, guess, sort of, kind of, possibly, perhaps, could, almost like, try, seems, hopefully, and one day. I've actually, so we have an app coming out. We got a whole team. Cool. They're rad. Yeah, super cool. And the product manager, the guy who's the centerpiece of the whole thing. And same thing with jujitsu. We're very mental, okay, in our society. And when people get into jujitsu, you're using your hands, okay? And jujitsu doesn't lie. Either your shit works or it doesn't, okay? And so it's this tactile, there it is, process. We get to feel things. And this guy, he's one of the reasons why he's so good at what he does is because he's got a wood shop. And he'll go out there and he will make wooden whatever you want or laser etched stones. I've had more abracadabra stones than I can count. He is laser etched. And my latest project with him is I've ordered I've got 2 in, there's 6 more on the way. Wooden plaques with the soft talk keywords engraved in. So they're not etched in stone yet. They're etched in wood. We'll get a little bit further down and I will have a stone plaque so I can say, I've got them etched in stone. Yeah. That soft talk challenge, you will be surprised. Oh, these words are in my language. And then you'll start hearing them everywhere. It's known as verbal litter for a reason. Shit is everywhere.
Yeah. And I think it's only probably been exacerbated because even while you're reading that through, I'm like, how many texts like that do you get where this whole non-committal thing of like, yeah, maybe we'll look at the calendar and maybe we'll do it. Do you remember when you had to like show up at an appointed time to meet with people before texts and cell phones where it was like, if you didn't have directions, you had to like print out a map?
Oh, dude.
But
I had a pager when I was in junior.
Yeah, exactly. Cool. I think we're about the same age. So then the next question would be, I know that you implement this with teams and I've implemented, we did radical candor in my team and we did some other things, some NLP stuff, with the team. And one thing that I've found is entrepreneurs, we're very open to change. We want to change, especially if it'll maximize our performance. Do you ever run into struggles when you implement this with teams? And if so, what is the best way that you've found to get teams to adopt this? And what are the results when those teams do?
Got it. We've done, so you're taking core language upgrade?
Sure. Yeah. Go ahead.
We've a good amount of team trainings with that. It's called an Instructor-Led core language upgrade. And it's done over 3 weeks. So it's 4 1-hour calls. Everybody gets a course and then there's bookends. So there's the guardrails that keeps everybody. So we put a lot of people through it and some very interesting things have come out of it. Everyone's feedback. Okay, let me back up. A lot of people's feedback is that soft talk was the thing that was most valuable for them. Okay. It improved their communication and they were getting more things done. Okay. So they were more productive. So in our certifications, yes, there's group trainings and everyone is an individual. They show up on their own. Most people are using their own finances, their own resources. They're there because they want to be there. Mm-hmm. One thing that these trainings can do is and we only came up with this terminology after we put a number of groups through and we started to see some patterns. Mm-hmm. There are some people out there, and it's good to know. It's good to know that they're there. Okay. In our language, they're called unsalvageable victims. Regardless of how good the thing is, they want the problems. They want the drama. Very frequently, they're spearheading the gossip. It's good to know who those people are because then you can, if you want to keep them on the team and you know how to, you could also, it's good to know. And most people, so I led a couple of years of workshops with this question. Hey, everybody, I'm Mark. Thanks for coming. How do you want to feel? And people can tell you that quite quickly. Most People want to feel some semblance of good, great, and confident. Okay. Mm-hmm. And so most people presented with a simple way to improve their personal and professional life, they get on board. There's also early adopters. So let's say there's a team of 100 people. Very frequently, we ask to get the top 10 people that are most open to this kind of thing and run an early adopter course. And then once that's run, then we put it out to the rest of the community, rest of the group. So it's a way of socializing these concepts in a traditionally effective. It's an effective way to do that, as opposed to everybody's going, we're doing this. It's simpler. It's easier.
One thing that I found was,
it takes time, man.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. It does. I think we had a little delay. One thing I found was when we did radical candor, you hit on this earlier, that particularly females don't want to come off as whatever, quote unquote, a bitch or whatever, too, abrasive, but males have the same problem.
Same thing.
But one thing that I did come across was you could have two people saying the same candorous thing, the same sort of solid talk, let's say, and it coming across poorly from one and not the other. And I think the thing that I found was when everybody knows that the sender of the message is doing so out of love for, or a sense of trying to accomplish this shared goal, well, then we can accept it. Like, I'm a pretty, not harsh coach, but I'm a pretty aggressive coach. And nobody ever had a problem with that. But on other ends, sometimes people will hear candor as, you want me to do the thing that you want me to do. And it's not for this shared goal. It's because you are power crazed or whatever. And so there's like some level of empathy, I guess, and sort of shared mission. I feel like that if we can find that common ground, that was what ultimately helped us a little bit. And I think, you talk about these folks that are maybe a little neurotic and maybe unsalvageable was, I think, the word you used. And I definitely feel that I've come across a few of those in my time. Have you found them able to stay on board in a system like that? Or more often than not, is that just maybe a wrong fit for a team that's committed to moving in the direction of more clear and concise communication?
Most of those individuals wanted to stay that way. Mm-hmm. Okay. And, this has been very well documented on teams. They'll put a bad player on a good team thinking that the good team's going to bring up that bad player. And it's the opposite. It's the absolute opposite. Mm-hmm. So depending on the mission, depending on the goal, the chemistry is a real thing when it comes to teamwork. Mm-hmm. And to reiterate something that you said, it's very hard it's obvious when someone's a team player. Okay. That's becomes very apparent very quickly, and how much someone cares, which is, it does translate into, how well things are received. Peter Drucker, he said, and if this is something that's interesting to your audience, as in how to use this in team settings, he was the number one sales person at salescars.com for a number of years. He's one of our original level 3 certified coaches. He runs all of the corporate trainings. I'm happy to have him come on and talk about this as far as cultural development. Mm-hmm. So our man, Peter Drucker, he said, culture eats strategy for breakfast. And what is one of, if not the main substrate of culture, it's language. You get everybody using similar language and communication patterns, and look at the words. You're really on the same page with everybody. Yeah. Like, our team meetings are fun. They're fun, they're productive, and they're smooth, and we make decisions because we know how to adjust our language when it's time to make decisions. We also know how to adjust the language when it's time to, be creative and have brainstorming sessions. And that in and of itself builds a lot of confidence, I mean, for me as a person who's struggled with confidence, knowing that I can use my language to be creative and productive and consistent, it takes a lot of the potential sting out of taking things personally and seeing myself in a fixed way. Because am I Mark, or am I the ability to create the story of Mark? Those are two different things. What's one is a who, and the other one is a what. That might be a little bit out there, and I like to go out there from time to time.
Sure.
But I have more fun with myself that way.
Do you think of yourself as a stoic?
Yes.
I've heard, and I'm not an expert by any means, but I've just heard some themes, some common themes that definitely hit home for sure. I think to your point that a shared language, particularly a tribal language that's unique. That's why I'm such a big believer in core values that are unique to your business and the folks that I've worked with, is that shared language. Like we've redefined the spirit of the puppy. If you come work for my team, like that is not a thing that you can find in a book. It's a thing that exists and it's used in meetings and it's used in conversation all the time. And I've got a bunch of those types of things and a lot. And I guarantee you, if I was a fly on the wall in your meetings, there'd be ways that you guys are using language that are tribal and unique and shared and probably all kind of accretive towards winning. Right. And I think that's so powerful. And I really thank you for coming on. I have two final questions that I ask everybody that comes on. And they're not exactly in the theme of what we've been doing. But the first question is, if you had access to unlimited capital, how would you profitably grow your current businesses?
I would get my business partner, Adam Chin, on the phone immediately. So we are very different people. We're an odd couple and we work very well together. So I am, up until the past 6 months, I have been the face of the business. Okay. Forward facing, head of sales, and the person that delivers all the trainings. Okay. He's the man in the chair. My responsibility is to fill up the bank account. His responsibility is to make sure we keep as much of it as possible and allocate our resources as intelligently as possible. And bringing him into the conversation, our app team would get a major shot in the arm. And that's the first thing. That's everybody's running sweat equity, and it would move things on a little bit faster. I'd have to think about that. That's my first answer.
Yeah. Well, and really just awareness, right? Like maybe that's marketing, or maybe it's just affiliate programs, whatever it might be, but just to make people aware of this. I think what you guys do, there's so few things that I feel like are simple, but unutilized. And I think what you guys do is simple and underutilized at least. The second question that I have for you is, if you had to give up every business that you've been a part of up until now and start something totally new, what direction do you think you might go?
So after, like I said, I've been doing this 15 years.
One trick pony.
One trick pony. After 10 years in the game, I looked around and I said, I have no more questions about what I'm going to do with my professional life. And I'm so grateful for this thing has held my attention from the very beginning. After 10 years of this holding my attention, I committed to 50 years. I said, I'm going to do this. I'm going to be in this game for 50 years. One, I want to know what 50 years of one single thing feels like. Okay. And I trust my fascination and passion will be there. So if everything just done and I had to make a decision right now, what am I going to do moving forward? I would go full on into presentation coaching, presentation skills.
Sure. Because
that is one of, if not the most fun thing to help people do, is to get on stage and, like I said, enjoy being up there and deliver a valuable, entertaining presentation for people.
That's great.
And another thing that comes to mind, because I do have a plan B.
Okay, hit it.
I'd go get my bartender's license and I'd move to the Caribbean and live in a shack and sling drinks and get myself a couple of sugar mamas back on the mainland and just, pina coladas till whenever.
It's funny. That's one of the common answers is like, I would just open a bar and have fun. And like, it's a lot of entrepreneurs have told me some version of that. Yeah. It's almost always community based. The answers have often been community based, but there's been at least 3 that have said I'd start a bar, or I would go waste away in Margaritaville, or whatever you want to say. So I think that's interesting, just because I think maybe there's this common thread of a fantasy of these, hyper productive entrepreneurial folks where they're like, or I could just go take ayahuasca once a month and like live in the Andes or something. Yeah, exactly. It's interesting. Well, Mark, thank you so much for coming on. This has been I feel like we just tapped the tip of the iceberg. So I would love to have you back on if you ever have anything else you'd like to talk about, as well as the folks we talked about earlier in the show. As a recap, where can folks find you? I'm sure that there's going to be people that have listened to this episode that would love to find you. So where's a good place for them to find you?
On Instagram at Enlifted Coaches. So we do about once every 2 months, once every quarter, we do a free workshop open to the public, which is done on a show and tell basis, which means I get on there, I say, hey, I'm Mark, thanks for showing up. Get your pen and start writing things down. And we apply the coaching system. So I coach and teach the whole way through. Very action-packed, they're raw. Okay, that's very real. And then enlifted.me, that's information about the certification business. Level 1 is all about dismantling the victim mentality in ourselves and in our clients. So those 2 places.
And I can also recommend your TEDx talk was also excellent as well.
Oh, thanks, man. It's fun. It's a lot of fun.
Again, Mark, thank you so much for coming on. I've really enjoyed this conversation. I look forward to staying in touch, man. This was an awesome time.
Likewise, Jason. Thank you.
Thank you guys so much for watching or listening to the show. If you enjoyed the show, please don't forget to show us some love by liking, rating, and subscribing so we can keep making more and better content. If you'd like to support the show and get a great additional content like exclusive shows and even live group masterminds, please head over to patreon.com/Spear and Clover to become a member of the tribe. If you're interested in learning more about how we help entrepreneurs, visit spearandclover.com or message us on any of our platforms. Thanks again, and we'll see you soon.